Okay, yo guys, it's John. I'm here in the headquarters in Los Angeles, and welcome to another episode of Amazon Seller Insights. I think this is episode 14, and it's the first of this year, 2019. So super stoked, and we've got a lot of good things coming up. So we do this once a month. We have a physical meetup here, and then we record it and we post it online, and lots more to come for this year. So super excited about today. We're going to do all things PPC. We're going to dive in, talk about Amazon PPC, and actually go into some campaigns and look at structure. And we're going to hear from Howard Lee. I'm super stoked to have you here today, so thank you for being here. Yeah, he's one of the first accredited Amazon PPC experts. So if you need to know anything PPC, this is the guy, and we've got him in-house today, so welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, this is a really hot topic. I think a lot is changing in the space, and I think if we can really dive in, and we're going to do things a little differently today. Usually we just have a Q&A and we bounce around and bounce around a few questions, but today we're going to do a little bit of that in the beginning, but then we're actually going to deep dive, go into a campaign, share the screen, we'll bring it up there, and obviously for the viewers here, we'll just bring up a screen as well, and then we'll go through some campaign structures and some strategies, talk a little bit about that, and then open it up for Q&A, where you can ask questions directly to Howard, or we can actually go in and look at a campaign. So it'll be a lot more hands-on, which I think is very, we need that when we talk about PPC. So
absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so let's kick it off. Maybe let's obviously start with a little bit of your background. You know, take us through a little bit of that journey from where you started and how you ended up being this accredited Amazon PPC guru that we have in-house here with us today.
Sure. So I've been in the Amazon space for 6 years.
That's long. That's long.
It's a lifetime in the Amazon space for sure. Yeah, so I guess I'm considered one of the seniors. But there's plenty of people who've started Amazon way later than me that have been far more successful. So being senior doesn't mean I get any sort of special benefits conferred on me or anything like that. But I signed up for the first version of Amazing Selling Machine.
Gotcha.
So
Amazing Selling Machine
ASM,
1.
ASM 1.
Okay,
exactly.
wow, great.
Exactly. So that was March 2013. I was working in IT at the time for one of the major auto manufacturers out there. I was one of the leading data architects in their IT department. So I was working 10 hours a day at that job, but also going back home and working 10 hours a day on Amazon, trying to build it up.
What made you, just out of interest, what made you, you know, you were doing this 10-hour job on data analytics, what made you actually join ASM1 and actually explore that? Like what was the interesting thing for you?
The background to that is that, so I'm actually ironically a risk-averse guy. Okay. You know, and which is a contradiction in the Amazon space, right? Because there's a lot of risk built in from product research and then sourcing and then marketing, right? And then you know, a lot of the PPC stuff can be considered like a black box operation, right? Like a lot of people, it can be confusing. Sure. But the reason why I got into the Amazon space was I actually had a pretty good friend of mine whose wife was working from home on Amazon stuff, but this is before we knew about ASM. And she was doing okay. She was doing relatively well. And he told me about some of the things she's doing, and he was interested in taking that to the next level. So that was a month before I heard about ASM. So I brought it to his attention. We both looked at a couple of the videos that Matt and Jason dripped out there. And it just fell in line with exactly what, it started answering a lot of the questions we already had. So we decided to take the dive, sign up, and the rest is history.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you grew your own Amazon business, and you still have one today, and that's you know, been doing 7 figures. You've been doing incredibly well with that. So what was the journey from there to, you know, the PPC side? How did you go there?
Sure. Yeah, so we hit 7 figures, I believe, in year 2.
Wow.
Those were the, but then again, those were the early days.
Yeah.
So we entered
Black
into,
yoga mat, 7 figures a year.
Oh yeah, exactly. Garlic presses. You know, there was only 4 of the competitors, so all we had to do was just, you know, spend 10% ACOS on our PPC and we ranked number one or something like that, right? But yeah, we got into a couple of niches that nobody was in. In fact, one of the niches, we were the first private label brand for it, and we did pretty well from that. That niche has since been saturated. It's been very heavily saturated. There's hundreds of thousands of competitors for that product. So we went from seeing profit margins of 200% dwindle down to 5% nowadays, maybe, if at all. So, but a few years into that, we came across, a couple of years into that, we came across some new PPC strategies. And we were doing really well organically. Our PPC strategy, or the existing campaigns that we had, that we created pretty much just on the fly without really any direction, was doing well as well. Then, as we all tend to do sometimes, we come across a material and we try it out. Well, by trying it out, what I did was I took my existing campaigns and I stopped them, and I tried the new campaigns. Well, many of you know that that's one of the cardinal sins on Amazon, especially with PPC. You don't stop campaigns if they've gained traction, if the stats are favorable. Well, and the question is,
quality score.
Right, exactly. Oh, you hit it. You hit the nail on the head. The quality score, exactly. So we started the new campaigns, and sales tanked just overnight. With the new campaigns, so this is even before we knew about the concept of losing the quality score and having to start all over with a fresh set of campaigns. So we just focused on the new set of campaigns, and it took months before it gained considerable traction. But by the time it gained traction, the competition was already flooding the market. The ACOS was really high. The stats were looking unfavorable, so it was just a struggle at that point. And there was no way to revive the old campaigns because they aged out pretty much at that point. That's when I came across, so there's some fast forwarding that happens, and happened there, and I came across Brian Johnson. So that's a name that we've all probably heard in the space. He, at the time, had his course open. I don't know if it's still open or not nowadays, but he opened the course. He had it open, and I signed up for 1.0, took that course. Then, because of the struggles we were encountering with our new set of campaigns, I actually hired him on as things come full circle. So I hired him as a consultant for our account. So he basically directly coached us for several months.
Amazing.
Yeah, and then SPA 2.0 rolled out. We got into that. So I come from the Brian Johnson School of PPC. To basically summarize that. So from there, internally with my brand, we built out an extensive set of SOPs, one of them including PPC management. And then fast forward a few years down the road to maybe a year and a half ago, I learned through my personal circle of friends that a couple of them had actually started Amazon businesses as well. So I decided, hey, it'd be cool to try to take the SOPs we developed and apply them in terms of best practices and suggestions to them, and see if the SOPs that we've developed can be forklifted to somebody else and make them successful as well. It turned out we got a 100% success rate. Everybody was happy. And again, it was only a handful of friends, but they did really well. Fast forward a little more, that's when I decided, okay, well, our SOPs seem to work. Maybe it's time to try opening up an agency, an Amazon marketing agency. So summer of 2018, a few months ago, that's when we opened the doors to Correlate. And then fast forward a little bit more, that's when November 2018 rolls around and Amazon releases, they started dripping out some education modules. And along with the education modules, along with that were some assessment tests. So there was an accreditation for Amazon advertising sponsored products. So that was November 2018. I remember it was towards the end of the week. And I was about to clock out within half an hour, just kind of chill for the weekend. And I saw that email pop up. I looked at it. I was tired. And I go, you know what? All right, let's see what this is all about. Opened up the email. And there was a set of lessons. So the lessons were I forget how long it was, but Amazon said it would take about 3 or 6 hours to go through, and there was an assessment test that took 45 minutes to go through. And I'm like, oh my gosh, 45 more minutes before the weekend? Jeez, all right. But I just said, you know what, I'll just sit down and try to bang it out. So 15 minutes later, I'm on my last question.
And you didn't really go through any of the education modules?
I didn't go through any of the education module. I just took it blindly, and I'm at the last question. You know, sometimes when you're in assessment tests and you blow through it, right? You're at the last question, and you go, wow, I hit a home run with this. But then there's a little bit part of you goes, well, maybe I really bombed it, right? So I answered the last question, the test closed out, and Amazon gave me a pretty decent score. And I'm like, all right, cool. Yeah.
Awesome.
So that's kind of like the journey. Yeah, it was kind of a
okay, cool. So PPC, Amazon PPC, even a year ago, I've had a little bit of experience with Google AdWords, and I always say like Amazon was just 10 years back from where Google is on the PPC.
Sure.
They were pretty archaic. In the beginning, it was really simple. You could just go in there and simply set a campaign up and pretty much manage that yourself. But it's almost like in the last 6 months, the light bulb has gone off for Amazon, and they're like, oh shit, we can make money from this thing. Let's put together some more features, and they've released a whole bunch of new features. It's a lot more sophisticated. So and going into this year, they're really you can feel they're putting a lot of focus into Amazon PPC. So, give us your 2019 analysis of the PPC and where you think it's going, what's happening in the space. Give us your insight there.
Yeah, that's a good question. I try not to think too far ahead, because on Amazon, especially in the online space, things just happen so quickly. Just even the last couple of months, dynamic bidding and placement of placement multipliers, that just got rolled out in the last couple of months. And some insiders may have saw that coming, but as far as everybody else, we were just kind of hit by a truck. What the heck is this? What do we do with this now? But to your point, Brian Johnson, just even 2-3 years ago, which is relatively a lifetime ago, he actually has a video. I don't know if a lot of you guys have seen it. He called it out. He said, because something happened at that time, and I forgot what it was. Something shifted with Amazon, and Brian Johnson came out and said, Amazon is going to try to rake as much money as possible from their ads. That was 2 years ago. That was before we see these articles lately about how Amazon advertising grew 60% last year. They're now the 3rd largest ads platform in the US. They've surpassed Microsoft Bing.
Now that's not hard.
Well, right. That's not too hard to do. And to try to go for second place is going to be even harder, right?
Exactly.
Facebook and Google.
Sure.
So we can see this coming. We can see more real estate on the search results pages. We can see more real estate on the product pages, taken up by ads, right? So previously, there was a lot more space on the product results page for organic placement. So blasts, launches, giveaways, those were kind of the tips of the day, right? But now it's kind of, you still need to be on top of that if your product niche warrants that. But you also have to, if anybody has been not paying full attention to PPC and the Amazon advertising platform, now's the time to do so. Because more and more spots on Amazon show up as ads. In emails, and just everywhere. Even lightning deals have ads on them, right? So for 2019, there's all these new features. It's interesting. I think there's a huge consensus on, or there's some consensus on what are some of the best practices with the traditional campaign structure. And now with these new features, the question becomes, well, what happens with them? Who's going to take advantage of them? How do we optimize campaigns that utilize these new features, like the new enhanced match types in the auto campaigns, the product attribute targeting choices that we have now. So it's going to be really interesting moving forward. I think more and more of the big players are going to be the early adopters for some of these new features and try to take advantage of it. Those big players are also going to have the resources to be able to absorb some of the costs as they experiment it. And but I still think there's a distinct advantage for the lower level sellers to be also get some impressions and get some clicks. Yeah, visibility.
So the question I kind of want to ask, and just from my own experience, is maybe give us some insight into your feeling on the Amazon algorithm. You know, so many times, you know, I start up a PPC campaign and it does something funky to my organic sales versus my PPC, or, you know, everything starts to shift towards PPC, or sometimes my sales influx on both sides. You know, what is your, and sometimes it feels like they're just winging it and trying to figure it out, but I feel like there's a little bit of a, you know, there's definitely absolutely a halo effect between PPC and your organic sales.
Absolutely.
And you see that it all is positive, and you kind of have to be in the PPC game, but a lot of people will switch off their PPC and see their organics rise. Like, what's your feel on that whole relationship on the algorithm side between organic and the paid side?
Yeah, I would say that there's a lot of factors at play. I would say that it isn't an absolute guarantee that if you nail it with PPC, your organic performance is going to increase. But that's the prevailing thought, and that still remains effective. That still remains it still remains valid. But occasionally, yes, you know, just like with all algorithms, what you do doesn't produce a certain result, a certain outcome that you're expecting. So I would say that there's potential that there's other external factors beyond your control. I mean, there's so many factors. There's seasonality, there's competitors, there's new products coming on, there's price changes, there's Amazon doing their own thing to your listing. You know, who knows, right? So it's really hard to just isolate the factors when it's kind of like driving on the freeway, right? Like, you're in control of your car 50% of the time, but you have to depend on everybody else around you to drive safely. So, so generally speaking, PPC does have a positive benefit to the organic ranking and to sales in general.
And is the attribution is last click? Do you know how the attribution works in terms of if someone comes through your pay-per-click ad, but then comes back and clicks on your organic, where are they attributing that? Do you know? Is it last click or is it the first click? And I haven't really necessarily figured that out. But
yeah, I don't think it depends on the last or first click. It just depends on within the 7-day window that they make that purchase.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a 7-day attribution window for that to happen.
Perfect.
Yeah. So with new campaigns, what I've noticed and what my colleagues have noticed is that automatic campaigns, if you set up automatic campaigns very shortly, within a day or two, they can get going. They can get impressions, they can get clicks, and they're just off to the races. As far as manual campaigns are concerned, we've seen it where it's really only at minimum 2 weeks, sometimes even 4 weeks out, before we start seeing a critical mass of activity, of impressions and clicks. So for manual campaigns, we tend to suggest to season them, to get them created. Yeah. Even if you don't have time to do keyword research, just get them going. Put in a placeholder keyword, or so we have a couple clients complain about putting in a keyword. So you could put in like the ASIN value for that ASIN you're advertising for. This is not product targeting. This is on the keyword side of things. Yeah. So
or just put in your own brand term.
You can put in your own brand term. Yeah. Right. So just get that going, get that season, and then come time when you're ready to put in keywords in those manual campaigns, then you can go ahead and put them in, and then hopefully that's sufficiently seasoned to be considered in the Amazon auction. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So there's two questions I want to touch on. One is exploring what you're talking about right now, which is, you know, how when you're launching. Firstly, the question I think is it's kind of at the point now where if you're in the Amazon game, you have to be doing PPC.
You should at least try it.
Yeah, you should. Yeah. But when you're creating and you're launching your product, how do you structure your campaigns? You know, automatic, manual, product targeting, those kind of things. So we can go over that now, but I don't know if that's part of what we've been sharing on the screen, or if you just want a high level talk about your basic strategy in terms of how you structure campaigns.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
So I can talk high level, and then we can kind of go through the demonstration so that it sinks in a little bit. Yeah. So for auto campaigns, what we do is we create 2 auto campaigns.
So this is, so just to stop you there, but this is, okay, I've created my listing and I've launched my product. What is the first thing that I'm going to be doing in PPC in terms of the strategy and how I'll structure it? Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
right.
cool. Awesome.
Yeah. And this could even be done ahead of time.
Okay.
Right. So those campaigns will only start running in Amazon's eyes only when you get inventory in. So if you have time, if your listing is complete, or as optimized as you can get it to be optimized, and you're just eager and ready to create the campaigns, go ahead and create them. So for auto campaigns, we create 2 of them. One of them is what we call auto high. Okay, so we set the bid on the high side, but optionally we set the daily budget to be on the low side. So that'll try to capture
high clicks, lower budget.
Right. It'll capture the keywords that have higher CPC, so that we're interested in it. Because with Amazon PPC, you're not just simply generating sales. You're also not just trying to support your organic rankings. You're also trying to gather data to analyze.
100%. Yeah.
So the first campaign will be the auto high, small budget, high bid. The second auto campaign is complementary to that, so it's a larger daily budget and a lower bid. And so we would suggest to just simply set it at the suggested bid. So those are the 2 auto campaigns. For the manual campaigns, we suggest at least very minimum, especially for the traditional campaigns, to have 1 research campaign and 1, some people call it profitable campaign. I call it the optimal campaign.
So wait, when you say research campaign, are you talking about keywords, manual keywords that customers would be using to research and find products? Is that what you mean by research campaign, or what do you mean by?
Yeah, so that campaign is what you'll use for when you're doing keyword research.
Okay.
To add to that campaign, you test it out, and whenever you see keywords or search terms exhibit favorable stats, then you take it out of the research campaign and you put it into the optimal campaign.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. And the reason for that is that you touched upon the quality score earlier, so you want to feed what historically we've inferred are the components that make up the quality score that Amazon doesn't publish to us. So you want to feed into that, and that's pretty much the key role for the optimal campaign. You take the winners and you put them into the optimal campaign.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. And then how do you, within that optimal campaign, do you have the same keyword exact and broad match within that, or do you separate out your exact phrase and broad, or how do you do it?
We don't ever exclude any match types. We consider all match types.
So if you have a winning keyword, you'll put it in there with all 3 types, right?
Right.
And then which one do you bid differently on those 3, or?
You definitely stagger the bids. So generally speaking, the broad match type will have the lowest bid, and then the phrase will be a little bit higher, and then exact will be a little bit higher than that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. And then I think last question before I have 2 questions. First, the new thing of keyword targeting versus product targeting. Should we be doing product targeting, and is that a great thing to do when you launch? Because you can, if you guys don't know, but product targeting is you can choose specific brands and then target your ads around those brands. So when they show up, your ads show up. Do you think that's worthwhile exploring, or how are you finding that?
Yeah, I definitely think it's worthwhile exploring. It's something we haven't widely deployed to our client accounts as of yet. The sense that we're getting about product attribute targeting is, if you think about it, you want to target against the listings that are less appealing than yours are. So as far as the average rating goes, you want to try to target the listings that have a lower product rating than yours does. And generally speaking, so generally speaking, as far as pricing goes, the price if we're going to filter on pricing, then we generally want to filter on products that are about 20% cheaper and 20% more expensive than your price.
So you're in that range.
So that's kind of like that ballpark, right?
Okay.
You're in that sweet spot. Because if you target any product that's in the same niche, but say one significant standard deviation lower than yours, right? That could be a commodity product versus yours could be a more premium product. Whereas if you target, you know, and the same goes vice versa for a product that's like twice the price of yours.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then I guess the last question, within Seller Central, what are the tools or reports that what are your day-to-day tools and reports within Seller Central that you look at?
Yeah. So absent of third-party tools, we would look at the search and report. That's probably the most popular report for everybody to analyze. We also look at the keyword report, now known as targeting. Now that the new features have rolled out, we're also starting to consider the placement report. So we're looking into that as well, determining which campaigns or which products seem to perform better, place at where their ads are showing up at the top of search. And then so we've done some experiments, but we don't have any best practices yet, but we've done some experiments where we create new campaigns strictly to try to earn that top of search placement for those campaigns.
Awesome.
It's probably something I'm not going to show today, it depends on how much time we have, but it's something experimental. Because we've tried it across a few accounts, and some accounts it seems like it works out very well, especially with dynamic bidding down in tangent with a top of search placement multiplier. But on other accounts, it didn't work out so well. So
awesome. Okay. Cool. I think you know, I've taken a little bit of time on these questions, so I think let's have some time where you can actually dive in. And I think the goal here is really to dive in and look at how you structure campaigns and whatever you need to teach us. Go through that, and then we'll hold some time at the end for some questions as well, where we can come back and actually look at that as well. So
sounds good.
Yeah, let's get it up on this screen over here. All right, let's go through it. So where do you want to start? I mean, I think wherever you want to run with, let's go.
Sure, yeah. So looking at this test account of sorts, I'm going to work on creating a campaign for the very first product. So we can see it's called the wooden alphabet toddler puzzle. So if you pull it up on Amazon, the computer's a little slow. We can see that it's indeed the wooden alphabet toddler puzzle.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to copy that, and there's a lot of steps you can take when coming up with creating campaigns, but one of the things that I want to focus on is doing keyword research. Okay, so I'm not going to use some of these tools that we use, but I'll walk you guys through the process that we go through. So first thing we'll do is search on Amazon and see if the search result page delivers relevant competitors. And we see that that's the case. Okay. So the attempt here, so the whole idea, the whole effort here is to come up with as many keywords as possible to populate the campaigns. There's other people who have launched techniques and strategies that are completely different, where they actually will focus on a very narrow set, a very hyper-relevant set of keywords. It can comprise of maybe just 10 keywords at the end of the day, and set it to exact match only, and off to the races they go. It's just as valid, but we feel that it's more valuable, it's more, you exercise more due diligence if you come up with a bigger set of keywords, but still that are still relevant. Because in some ways, if you can imagine it, it's kind of like your launch. So you know how with launch services, you get to target 1 to 5 keywords and you launch against them, right? But in some ways, PPC is kind of like launching hundreds of different launches and blasts at the same time against the keywords. Of course, you can't give away hundreds of units for each of these hundreds of keywords, but in some sense, it kind of gets the wheel going. So
yeah, I mean, from my experience, just with launching, I've had the most success with my products in that first 10 days when launching, and I've just blasted with automatic and manual, and just like put quite a big budget behind it and said, hey, I'm willing to really push these campaigns, and then obviously get a little bit of traction that way. So
right, and it depends on the tolerance of the seller. So for somebody like you, you want to be as aggressive as possible, right? Without completely losing your shirt on it. So that's a perfectly valid strategy. What I'm going to walk you through is a typical strategy for clients. So it's a strategy that falls in the middle between being very conservative and being very aggressive, like say with your strategy. So with this search phrase, would an alphabet toddler puzzle, we see a bunch of toys that look like toddler puzzles similar to what we're selling. But maybe I want to take out the word toddler and see if I still get search results that are more or less still relevant. So I see that it is, in fact, relevant, because what I'm trying to do is get that one keyword that is as broad as possible, but still relevant. So if I take out, say, for example, the word alphabet, okay, and if we give it a second, and we scroll down.
Yeah, sometimes Loom will slow it down a little bit, but
okay,
that's what it is. Yeah.
So we can start seeing puzzles that are not alphabetical in nature. So we're seeing a whole mix of things, whole mix of different types of puzzles. So we'll go back out, and we could try searching alphabet puzzle, but why don't we do that? Just for the sake of exercise. So alphabet puzzle seems like it's a pretty relevant
Makes sense.
Search phrase. And then, so what we'll do is we'll take...
I don't see adults having alphabet puzzles, but maybe.
That's what I was thinking earlier today when I was running through. It's like, some adults are into this kind of stuff too, reliving their youth. So the next step we do is we take this phrase and we use your favorite keyword generation tool to generate a list of keywords based off of it.
So just to recap that, you're taking a product and a longer tail type of keyword with a lot of description in it, and then you're trying to narrow it down into the most broad match keyword that still gives relevant results, and then using that to generate your keywords off of that.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Cool.
Another thing we do is we look for the top 10 competitors for this keyword. So we take those competitors, we take their ASINs, and we do reverse ASIN searches in any of the variety of keyword generation tools out there. And that'll spit out a list of keywords that we can use. So we take those keywords, and what we do is we'll then, so typically there's going to be several keyword files. And what we'll do is we'll open up each one. And so here, for this instance, we only have 2. I'm going to open up these 2. And I'm going to open up a third Excel file. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the complete list of phrases from each one. So that's file 1 and file 2. Okay. And so that gives us 204 phrases or search terms. And then the next thing I'll do is I'll remove duplicates. So go through that. 5 duplicates found. So there's 200, it's roughly 200 keywords remaining. So I'll copy that. And I have some notes here because what I'm going to do next is actually start creating these campaigns. So I'll go to Campaign Manager. And I'll pause this one. I'll create a campaign.
So this is your manual campaigns outside of your. So you've really got automated ones set up and running, right?
I'm gonna walk through the automated.
Okay, cool. Okay, awesome.
In case people are curious about that. So I'm very data-driven kind of a guy. I like to also make things as descriptive as possible. So in our agency, we have a naming convention, and this is the naming convention we use. So just to go through it real quickly, I mean, this looks pretty cryptic, but the first part is the date. That's the date we created the campaign. The next part is C8, which is abbreviation for my agency. Next is product line. A lot of people simply call this the product. After that, we include like the variation name. So if like you're selling towels, that would be the name of the product line. And then if you're selling a blue towel, then the product name would be blue.
Don't give away my product, man.
Maybe I just gave away my product. Then I'll put in an ASIN. So this will be the ASIN value, and it will be inserted in here. Then after that, I'll put the campaign type. So we're going to be creating auto campaigns first. And then finally, there's this tag called descriptors, which allows us to put anything we want. So in the last couple of months, we saw, like the placement top multiplier come out, right? So that's a descriptor that we could put in here. Where we type placement.
Yeah, I definitely want to remember that placement top versus page versus other pages. We should talk about that later on.
Right,
sure.
right. Yeah. Okay, so then the reason why we come up with this naming convention is that, so one of the features that had been rolled out in the past few months is our portfolios. And portfolios are strictly an organizational mechanism. They're great for defining a budget that applies to all the campaigns that you put into the portfolio. But prior to that, it was difficult to sort the campaigns and look at the aggregate stats based on all the campaigns for a product. So we deliberately put in the ASIN or sometimes the SKU value so that we can identify the list of campaigns. And we still do that to this day, simply because portfolios just came much more later on. And so that's what we'll use for our naming convention. So I'll go ahead and create these automatic campaigns. And I've actually already pre-created them. So take this daily budget. So the range for the daily budget, so this is for the auto high campaign. So the range is going to be $5 to $10. And the second automatic campaign is going to have a larger range of daily budgets. And the reason why I put this range is if we go ahead and put, say, okay, so let's start with $5 daily budget. We're going to leave this with automatic targeting. And for the ad group, we also have a naming convention where we take the ASIN value and we follow it up with the targeting, I guess the targeting type, for lack of a better term. Cool. So that'll be auto. Then this, having the ASIN there makes it really easy because we could search for it. There are 2 SKUs, and I'm not going to bother figuring out which one is the valid one. I'm just simply going to add the first one. Okay. Campaign strategy, so for traditional campaigns, we're going to leave this as dynamic bids down only, because if you read this description here, Amazon actually tells us that prior to rolling out the option for selecting a campaign bidding strategy, that it was dynamic down behind the scenes. So most people are most familiar with tuning their campaigns and optimizing based on the traditional campaign structure. So therefore, we're going to stick with dynamic bids down only. Okay, so if we read this real quickly, they say that will lower your bids in real time when your ads may be less likely to convert to a sale. Okay, so the difference between that.
So that's their attempt at day parting almost, like when people aren't searching, they'll drop the bid a bit. But
I think so, yeah. So this is also why. This also explains why you may set the bid, or in a lot of cases you'll set the bid at $1, but your CPC is going to be 40 cents or 50 cents or 60 cents. So this explains why. Now the antithesis of that is fixed bids, where if you fix it at 50 cents, then
no matter what,
then you're right. So if there's going to be placement that dictates, like 40 cents or 30 cents, then theoretically you may not get the impressions, but we're not really sure about that per se. Again, because these are very new features. So we'll set this and we'll leave it at dynamic bids down only. Okay, so the default bid down here, the suggested bid is 55 cents. Now, so this is the auto high campaign, so we want to bid high. The top end of what Amazon suggests is $3.25. Ooh. So I'm actually going to put in $3.25. Okay.
Okay.
Well, $3.25.
It's one click.
Thank you very much. You barely get a click in.
Yeah.
Right. So then, okay, all right, 5 cents is not going to yield you too many data points, so let's bump this up to 10.
Gotcha.
Okay. Sometimes we see the suggested bid range be absolutely crazy, like potentially in the supplement space, potentially beauty. You can see suggested bids being values exceeding $5, sometimes $6, $7. In that case, well, those are saturated niches, so you're just going to have to adjust accordingly for that if you still care to get into those niches. For negative phrase, there's no need to put anything in there. And then we will launch this campaign.
So, and then if you're doing, we don't have to go through that, but if you were doing the automatic low, you would just do the opposite of that. You do the
Pretty
5
much.
and then choose it on the same level.
Right, right.
Cool.
Okay, so I'm going to go back here, create campaigns. So the bid range is $10 to $20, so we'll set it at 20. Automatic targeting.
So yeah, because you're doing a higher daily budget but a lower click.
That's right.
Gotcha.
That's right. Copy the ASIN, search for the ASIN.
I'm just repeating it for my own head.
Just so we'll give you a pop quiz later. Default bid, you could leave it at 75 cents. The suggested bid is 55. We'll actually go with 55 cents in this case. So let's make sure everything looks right. So daily budget of $20, automatic. And dynamic bids down only, good, looks good. And we'll go ahead and launch a campaign for that.
Great.
Okay, so that takes care of the automatic campaigns. Now for the research campaigns, for the manual campaigns, there's going to be 2 of them. So one of them is going to be the research campaign. And we like to create 3 ad groups underneath the research campaign.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so this is for organizational purposes, and this is just a good way to know, hey, in which bucket are we going to drop the broad match, the phrase, and exact match keywords. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And yeah, I don't know if this is something that's worth emphasizing, but one of the best practices that I see violated a little still in this day and age, too many times, is that sellers still combine multiple SKUs into one ad group, and that presents a problem because when you look at the search term report, there is no way for you to look at the search term. So search term report is a very granular report.
And you're talking about so one campaign, one variation, one campaign.
One variation per ad group.
Okay.
Yeah. Because when you look at the search term report, that report is broken down to the ad group level, but that's as granular as it gets. It doesn't break down further into the SKU level. So when you look at the search terms, and we're going to talk about optimization techniques a little bit based on search terms, if your ad group has 5 SKUs and you've got a search term that looks like it's performing poorly, well, that search term is performing poorly based on the average of those 5 SKUs. So one of those SKUs could actually be performing pretty well, but the other 4 are performing poorly. So if you combine 5 SKUs into that ad group, you're never going to be separated. In fact, you're going to negative exact match that search term, and you just lost some opportunity with that one SKU, and that search term for that one SKU that can be performing well. So, we continue to get accounts where we see 2 SKUs, 4 SKUs, sometimes even 20 SKUs per ad group, and we're sitting there going, okay, we need a few weeks to tease apart your ad groups, so that.
I mean, yeah, this is brilliant in the fact that, you can attest to this, is that structure is so important because as you grow it over time, 3-4 months down the road, if you haven't got your structure right, then when you learn optimization techniques as you go, you might not be able to optimize because you're like, oh shit,
you're unable to because you can't see the data behind the scenes.
So this is gold in terms of how you're talking about setting up the structure. It's really, really great.
Yeah. So campaign. So this is a research campaign. So 20 to 40 a day. So if we're launching aggressively, then we'll set the budget to 40. We'll set this to manual targeting. And the first ad group is going to be the broad one. So we'll take that, plug it in here, take the ASIN, assign it to this ad group, add it. Again, dynamic bids down only. Now, this is going to seem repetitive to some of you, but there's more to it. Keyword targeting, default bid. So this is the default bid at the ad group level. It's not necessarily the bid we're going to assign to the keywords. So this is going to be the broad ad group, right? So let's double check, make sure that that's the case. So indeed it is.
Gotcha.
So with all of Amazon's suggested keywords, they all default to the broad match type. So we're going to add them all. We're also going to take...
Add your Excel spreadsheet, right?
And we're going to, correct, we're going to combine it with the search phrases from the Excel spreadsheet. Then we'll go into the second tab, make sure the match type is broad, and paste it in. And we'll click on Add Keyword. Okay, so these keywords cannot get added because there's some characters that Amazon doesn't like, such as potentially the comma, the hyphen, and these are way too long tail anyway. So this is the broad match, so we're just going to delete them all. And then down here, what we'll do is we'll apply the suggested bid. Okay, so I'm going to click Apply All. So all the keywords will register with the suggested bid. And then we'll launch campaign. But we're not done with that campaign yet. So I'm going to go into Edit Campaign. And we're launching. And this is the broad match. So what I'll do is go to Ad Groups, go to the broad ad group, and go to Targeting. Okay. And I want to expand the number of results to the maximum available. So we have gotten, we've got 288 keywords that we inserted in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click all of them and adjust bid and set the bid to increase bid by 25%.
So 25% bigger than the suggested bid?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's for the first 100 keywords. I got to go through the additional pages.
Gotcha.
So here, I'm going to do that. Adjust bid, set bid. Okay, so increase bid by 25%. Save. And then finally go to the last page. Set bid, increase bid by 25%. And that's it for now for the broad ad group. Okay.
So I got a quick question on that, but what I find when I add this many keywords to a campaign, a couple of days in, our impression volume are being driven by some of them, but we're not getting that impression volume down into some of the other keywords. Now, is that just Amazon's algorithm, or do you find that they usually try and generally split that in the beginning and then start to favor some keywords, or how do you?
It's Amazon testing. It's Amazon's own AI, their own ad auction. There's AI built in it. They're testing it out. They're testing to see. They're basically placing your ad for that keyword in different positions to see if it registers. They're also taking that keyword tied to the optimization you've done on your listing, and we can surmise and guess that behind the scenes they're trying to match it against other products that have sold against that keyword. So one concept that we haven't touched upon, it's relevance. Relevance is absolutely key.
Relevance is
So a lot of you guys might have seen that your listings have so maybe 2, 3 years ago, you could play around with putting your listing in different categories to, or earn the orange bestseller badge, right? Or earn this badge and that badge, or to look higher in the BSR, or things of that nature. But over time, Amazon has actually been using their algorithm to pull your listing into what it believes is the most relevant category. Even if that category, you know for a damn fact, is not relevant, but they'll still, so they're taking an 80-20 approach, really, right? With trying to automatically shift listings into those categories. So, so before people could manipulate which subcategory in, it's no longer the case. So it's really not as big of an issue, but sometimes it could still be an issue because some products can exist in 5 separate subcategories. It could be in home, it could be in automotive, it could be in scientific industrial. I mean, we've seen one product where it fits in all 3 of those categories. It's kind of insane.
But if I put in 288 keywords and I run that campaign for 5 days, and then I look at it and the top 20 have got all the impressions and clicks, but the rest of them haven't even got impressions. Is that, should I take that as saying, hey, those other ones are not relevant?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. So that's where seasoning comes into play, comes into effect. So a lot of times we actually do very little with the manual campaigns for the first 2 to 4 weeks.
Gotcha.
Just to be able to establish like click history with the Amazon ad auction. And then finally, okay, so the data starts rolling in, then we could do some optimization tuning based off of that.
So 4 weeks later, if there's some of those that are not getting impressions, you can be like, hey, maybe these ones aren't as relevant. Or,
yeah, especially those that get a lot of clicks and they're just not converting.
Gotcha.
Then we just, X them out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, we negative match them. Okay, so just to continue, should I just continue creating?
I think you can skip the exact and the phrase because it's going to be the same thing that you're going to set up and probably go to the next point.
Okay. So with the optimal campaign, we are going to set it up, but it's not going to contain any keywords.
Yeah, that's good.
So this is really just for aging.
And you would add your brand term or whatever, right?
You can add your brand, you can add an ASIN value, correct. So for this one, we can add, for now, just $20 a day. There's nothing in it, but you would take that and you would create, once again, at minimum 3 ad groups. Take this ASIN, put it in, search for it, add it, dynamic down, default bid, keyword targeting. So you can add one of these suggested keywords if you want. You can go to enter keywords and then take the ASIN value, plug it in here. Again, this is not product targeting, this is keyword. Add it in. You could even set the keyword bid to 10 cents if you want to virtually disable it and launch the campaign. So we're probably not going to need to go through it, but then you'll also create 2 more ad groups based on that as well.
And that again would be phrase.
Broad phrase and exact match.
3 separate campaigns.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Wow, that is awesome. I have to go back and rewatch all of that because that's definitely gold. That's awesome.
And this is at the bare minimum that we create. Yeah. So
amazing. So I think that for me is it. I think I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that I want to cover. But I think what we can do is open it up to questions. I'm sure you guys have a bunch of questions, and we can run through some of those and take it from there. But that was awesome. I really appreciate you going through that basic structure because I think to that point, it's giving you the data that you need so that you can then begin to optimize your campaigns and 5 or 6 or 7 weeks down, you're not getting to a point where you're like, oh, I have to recreate my campaigns because I got all the architecture wrong. So I think that's really, really great. Yeah.
Right, yeah. And I think a lot of people get nervous when they don't see any activity for the first couple of days, especially in the manual campaigns. Be patient, give it some time. It's if 2 weeks go by and you still don't see data in there, still, try to be patient. If 4 weeks go by, okay, 3 or 4 weeks go by, you may have a problem. And it's time to start troubleshooting into those campaigns. But yeah.
Awesome. All right, let's go with the questions. I think we got to go with our man Perry first.
Thank you so much.
There's a mic there if you want to use it.
Okay, great, thanks. Howard, thank you so much for being here.
Sure.
Most informative presentation. Could you help us weigh the value as if we were building an algorithm of factors including spend, conversion rate, ACOS, CPC? How would you weigh those?
Yeah, so what we've typically seen is that the 3 factors that determine the likelihood for you to win the ad auction, first and foremost, it's not the bid. Okay, bid is one of the last factors that Amazon considers. So we've seen, yeah, so
Wow.
that should be some encouraging news for some of you out there.
Jeez.
We've seen, so our average CPC that we've seen across all the accounts that we manage, it's actually less than $1. So that should give you guys some indication that you don't have to go for 5, $10 CPCs unless you are in a saturated, in a very, very saturated niche. Then there's no avoiding it. So the factors are campaign age, right? I learned that the hard way, based on the story I was telling you guys earlier. So campaign age is one of them. CTR is another one, click-through rate. And the third one is the number of clicks. So historically, it has been the case where CTR was the most prevalent metric to really dial in, just to give you a leg up in winning the ad auction. But a couple of our peers have seen that those 3 stats have kind of equalized in priority. So, yeah. So.
Gotcha.
But then things like ACOS, that's a parameter that you yourself have to determine whether or not that meets your targeted ACOS goals. So,
is campaign age just based on the, or age based on the campaign or the ad groups as well, or can you?
It's at the campaign level.
So you can switch off ad groups within there.
That's correct.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. Yep.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Who's next?
Thanks, Howard.
Sure.
So in this example, let's say you had a wooden alphabet puzzle, red, blue, green. Would you set up all these campaigns for each color?
So our internal best practice nowadays is yes. So you can imagine if you have 40 variations, that's going to create an insane number of campaigns. So yes for that. If you don't have time to do that, then at very minimum, you can have one campaign for all your parent-child variations, like the red and the blue and the green. But you would just create different ad groups for them. So you see on the screen where it says, B00 ... MGW auto. So if the blue one has an ASIN ending in TTT, then you would create TTT auto. So it would fall under that same campaign, right? So that way, when you log into Campaign Manager, you don't get overwhelmed with seeing hundreds of campaigns, right? So everything is neatly organized in that sense, but you still get that data granularity with your search and reports.
Gotcha.
So after you've built a campaign and you increase the bid by 25%, how do you come to that 25%? That's based on analytics, or that's based on you just, where does that number come from, that 25%?
Yeah, it's based on, it's based on what we've found that seems to work.
I mean, it's a high-level strategy because you just want to be aggressive up front. So you're just picking a number of 25, and then after you run it a while, you can optimize it down. But you just want to be a little bit more aggressive, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And for the broad keywords, they're going to be increased 25% over the suggested bid.
So it's not over the max bid, it's over the suggested.
It's that suggested bid that falls in the middle of the range. And then phrase is going to be 50% more than the suggested bid, and exact match is going to be 75% more than suggested bid. So if the broad match keywords don't win, then the heavy lifting hopefully falls on the keywords that are in the phrase or exact match.
Yeah.
You can always tweak your percentages that you want to increase the suggested bid by, depending on your risk tolerance, your level of aggressiveness. So that's just kind of like So this is just a typical campaign scenario. If we want to be conservative, then we just simply stick with the suggested bid for the broad match, and then stagger the phrase and the exact match bids to increase from there. But you always want to try to stagger the phrase and exact match to be higher than the broad.
And then the data that you've collected, it actually shows you that you are paying 25% more than the top bid sometimes, and then or a suggested bid, like you go through all that to double check it, or you're kind of just.
So that's not necessarily the case. So so bid is one aspect of winning the ad auction, right? Bid is one aspect of advertising, but there's also the CPC, right? So a lot of times we see the bid set at one level, right? So the bid could be $1, but the CPC, just a simplified example, could be at 50 cents. And it's always at 50 cents, but oftentimes we've seen cases where we try dialing down the bid. We dial it down to 80 cents. We dial it down to 70 cents, right? But we never dial it down so close to 50 cents that we get to that point where suddenly, literally overnight, impressions just go to 0. So, so when we do our adjustments, we adjust it based on bid, and that's why also when we analyze our data, we see that there's a wide disparity between CPC and bid amounts. So, so bid is the lever that you move, but your actual figure that you pay for is the CPC. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, this side of the room. Okay, okay. Yeah, anyone?
So I've seen my ACOS get driven up over time, and I'm wondering if you have any experience with fraudulent clicks and non-clicks.
Yeah.
I know that you can reach out to sellers to report.
Right. Absolutely.
Have you had any success with them validating that that's happening, or any best practices around that?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah, we've had a decent level of success reporting it and getting the funds refunded for it.
Oh, wow.
The Amazon ad algorithm is actually getting better and better at detecting click fraud, and so that you don't have to worry about it. But we just got off a client call this morning where he's selling a product that's it's a how can I explain it? But anyway, he's actually not that high level of a seller, okay? But he experienced click fraud where he got $1,000 worth of clicks in one day, and he's a low level seller. His ad spend is, yeah, it's not $1,000 a day, but he got $1,000 worth of clicks on a search term that is completely unrelated to his product.
And no conversions.
And absolutely no conversions, right? So the conversion rate is absolutely atrocious. So he had tried raising a ticket for that. 2 weeks ago on a call with him, that's when I noticed the click fraud, and I told him, hey, you should probably open up a ticket with seller support. They actually came back and said, no, you should have negative exact matched the search term. You should have caught it. And I told him to go back and raise another ticket and tell them, yeah, but search terms don't come up in Campaign Manager, so how can we detect it? How do we negative exact match it? And so we're aware that we can detect it from the search term report, right? But we're just trying to finagle a way to get those $1,000 refunded. We're going to try a couple more times, and then we're going to just continue trying until we get to a point where we've exhausted our options, and we'll just keep escalating, because that $1,000 hit him really hard.
Sure.
So the stat we're looking for is, like John said, that it just doesn't convert, so number one. But there's a lot of search terms and keywords that don't convert. But so on top of that, you want to look for a CTR rate of something like 1%. Because a lot of the keywords on average, we see CTR rates of 0.3%, 0.5% across the board. So if you see a CTR rate of 1%, 2%, but the conversion is 0, and yeah.
Well, that's a lesson in also setting your daily budgets, right? So he obviously didn't set his daily budget.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Quick question.
Oh, I think we're right there with the microphone.
What are your thoughts on launching for one keyword
my daily budget, exact match, so like $100.
Right.
What
Yeah.
are your thoughts on that strategy?
So it can be an effective strategy if you know your niche really well, if the keywords are very clear cut and straightforward. And I think, so I've had this talk with several other high-level sellers, and they sometimes don't get what I'm saying, because there's a lot of products out there where the BSR is very nice and favorable, right? But the distribution of search volume for the keywords is really even. And that's actually pretty bad, because there's no one keyword that sticks out as the favorite by far, right? So that strategy works if you know your keyword, if you know the search volume, you know the relevance, right? Like everything just makes sense. Go for it, yeah. It starts not making sense when you get into other products that can be described with 100 different very, very valid and relevant search terms. On top of that, the exact match, we've seen maybe 20% of your total potential traffic come through exact match. So if you don't focus on broad and phrase, then you're leaving 80% of that traffic off the table, which ultimately results into conversions as well. In fact, there is a bias in the ad auction for phrase match over broad and exact. So if you're short on time and you only want to target one keyword, you can definitely try exact, right? But alongside it, try the phrase match as well and see how that works. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so I want to be conscious of time. So I think we're probably going to do about 3 more questions and then call it, and then you guys can come up and ask a bunch more questions. But we've got about 3 more.
So what are some of your SOPs for reviewing search term reports? Since there's a lot of data in there.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what are the key things you focus on?
Yeah, very good question. So there's a series of steps we go through. And I had to create the SOP because I sometimes don't even remember all the steps, okay? So one of the things we want to do is we want to cut bleeders. So by cutting bleeders, you want to look for search terms that are just absolutely not converting at all. So you filter on orders equals 0. So it's pretty straightforward to filter on. Then the question becomes, well, what's next? What's to filter on? So there's some experts that say you want to filter based on the number of clicks equal to 5. So if you see search terms that get 5 or more clicks, then you want to negative exact match those. There's other experts that say you want to negative exact match where you get 8 or more clicks for that search term. So you want to do that. Then there's another school of thought where you want to negative exact match the search terms where the number of clicks exceeds the inverse of the conversion rate for that SKU. Okay.
Okay.
So the inverse of the conversion rate, so say for example, the conversion rate is 20%, so that's 1 over 5. So the inverse of that is 5. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's a product that's converting really well in PPC. Okay. So then you would negative exact match the search terms that get 5 clicks or more. Okay. If your conversion rate is, I'm probably the only Asian that's really bad at math. So if you have a conversion rate of 5%, so that's 1 over 20. So if you invert that, then the number of clicks that serves as your threshold to exact match is 20. Okay. So what are the pros and cons of all that? So a lot of people do rely on looking for 5 clicks or more as the threshold, right? And a lot of other people think that that's really low. That might, in fact, be artificially low, okay? So that'll cut your costs real quickly, but it may not. So the theory is, well, it's not really a theory, but if you follow along with that thought, you're not giving that search term enough chance to possibly acquire more clicks to see if it may net that 1 click that that produces a sale that actually makes it profitable or that benefits organic ranking. Okay, so 8 is a little bit of a more comfortable median between 5 and the inverse of the conversion rate. There are accounts where the product type is very evergreen. Okay, they're slow selling, they're lower volume, but it's very evergreen. So we base the criteria for defining negative exact match for the search terms based on the inverse of the conversion rate. Usually the best practice is to look at 60 days worth of data. Sometimes we look at 90, sometimes look at 120. For the really evergreen clients, we may look at 180 days worth, which is nearly half a year's worth of data. A lot of times the clients want that, they want that preference, so we just roll with it. But it's none of them really good results. So that's the first thing we do. Another thing we do is we look at what are called low potential search terms, so going back to feeding the Amazon algorithm of wanting to sustain a higher click-through rate. So if the search term has a click-through rate of 0.15% or lower, right? We negative exact match those as well. We do similar things with keywords. We don't negative exact match keywords per se, but we dial them down to a bid so low that it very rarely gets any clicks. So that would be about the 10-cent level or the 15-cent level. Yeah. So that's how we cut bleeders. And then for the keywords where the ACoS is lower than your target ACoS, you want to increase the bid maybe like say 20, 25% at a time.
Gotcha. Wow. Okay. We've got a couple more. So,
all right.
And then we'll call it.
Hey.
I noticed that you had about 288 keywords targeted in your manual campaign.
Yeah.
Do you ever find a max target of keywords per campaign? And the second question, do you ever have any practices on like avoiding keyword cannibalization? So like when you find something optimal, you block it from your auto or your research campaign?
Yeah. So we put in as many keywords as produced by the keyword generation tools that are relevant. There's some tools that actually spit out thousands upon thousands of keywords. And if you sort through those keywords, a lot of them don't look relevant at all. If you even try to evaluate those keywords and kind of squint, and they're like, is that relevant or not? No, it fails that litmus test. You ask your mom, you ask your friend, no, it fails all those litmus tests. So some keyword tools do that. We shy away from those kind of keyword tools. But there are cases where thousands of keywords are generated because there are thousands of keywords that are I wouldn't say significantly, but are relevant enough. They're sufficiently relevant. Each ad group can only hold 1,000 keywords, so you would just create a second ad group for the overflow of keywords. And what was the second part of your question?
Cannibalization.
Oh, cannibalization. Like what aspect of cannibalization are you concerned with?
Like you mentioned that you start with a research campaign and then you kind of peel them out into your optimal campaign. I was wondering if you block those optimal terms,
Yeah.
like the auto campaigns or
Yeah.
research.
We don't, because Amazon will split the impressions based on the algorithm determining which keyword and which match type is best suited to be displayed for the impression. So we don't do that.
So if you pull it out of the research and into the optimal, you don't delete it out of the research?
Yeah, we don't. So
wow.
what we do with it, so what we do in the optimal campaign is we make sure that the bid is greater than bid in the research campaign. And then we also keep the keyword running in the research campaign in case it doesn't take off in the optimal campaign. Because once that does, if you go through a typical optimization routine, then you'll naturally dial down the keyword in the optimal campaign, and you continue, maintaining traction with the keyword in the research campaign. Yeah. But as far as bids are concerned, there's no bid escalation. Bid escalation doesn't occur if you have the same search term and keyword in your campaigns for the products in multiple locations. Yeah, no problem.
All righty, last question. Anybody got a last? All right there.
Along the same line, I've seen that moving keyword into your profit campaign with a higher bid
it clicks, and then you also see just really minimal prices, minimal costs in the auto campaign, 5 cents, while you're paying a lot more in the profit campaign. You know why that's happening?
It's the algorithm.
So the same keyword is basically costing 5 cents versus
right,
75 cents.
Right. We've seen that all the time. We have one client account where we actually have identical campaigns, okay, running, identical set of keywords, identical bids, everything's identical to the same ASIN, right? Not to 2 different SKUs, but to the same exact ASIN. And the bid behavior is entirely different between the 2 campaigns. Yeah. So what you would essentially do is just dial down the bids in the campaign that's not performing so well and keep feeding the other campaign, or keep feeding the keywords in the other campaign. So in an auto campaign, if you're profitable, if it's running really well, so we could talk about theory, right? So hypothetically and theoretically, the ideal situation is to move all activity out of the auto campaigns into the research and into the optimal campaigns. But in the real world, we have accounts where the auto campaigns are generating tens of thousands of dollars of profit, and we just keep them running.
Sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. Because for whatever reason, that keyword didn't stick in the research, let alone the optimal campaign. So, yeah, you just kind of have to follow the data.
age factor and how that, all of that plays
The age can,
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Dude, that was amazing. I think this is the one that I've seen with the most note-taking. Everyone's been scratching and putting out a bunch of notes. So we'd definitely love to have you back, because I know that it's such a broad topic that I think we can dive into a bunch of things there. But before we finish, if the guys need to get hold of you, how do they get hold of you? And what's the next crazy adventure that you're going to be getting on?
So yeah, you can reach me at my website. It's www.correlate. It's a wordplay. I'm kind of a cheeky guy,
right.
so here, I could type it up on the screen. Correlate.co. So that's my website. And then you can reach me at hlee@correlate.co. You can find me on Facebook. I'm on Facebook in the Facebook groups. Next crazy adventure. In a couple months, my wife and I were going to China.
Nice.
Yeah.
For the Canton Fair, or?
It's going to coincide with the Canton Fair, but we're going to skip the crowd.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, fantastic. Great, guys. So we'll have one in another month. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Please sign up for Amazon Seller Insights. Be part of that group. You'll get the replay. I know everyone's going to want to see this because we all have to watch it again to get all the nuggets out of that. If you want to try ZonGuru, the all-in-one software that we have created right out of this office, go to 14days.zonguru.com. You'll get a 14-day free trial. A lot of tools that you guys can try in that space. So check that out. Thanks, guys. That's amazing. And let's have one round of applause and a quick photo, and then we'll hang around and have a couple of beers and then leave in a couple of minutes. Dude, love that shit.
All right.
Amazing. Amazing.